Welcome into Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we talk about the Philadelphia Phillies split with the Cincinnati Reds, their upcoming series with the Chicago White Sox that got pushed back a little bit. I'll tell you about what happened there. And an interesting question about two young Philadelphia Phillies budding superstars and which one is going to have the better overall career. We'll discuss on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years over on the radio on 97.5 The Fanatic, a credentialed member of the Philadelphia Phillies media for a couple years now, and happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you very much for jumping in. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube. I appreciate all that significantly. You have no idea how much it helps me out. Takes 2 seconds for you. Subscribe to the YouTube. It helps you out as well because it gives you notifications when we have multiple episodes a day like we're going to have today, and stuff gets moved around and things like that. So go ahead and do that. It enhances your experience for following the podcast so much, and it helps me as well. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube, go ahead and check it out and hit that subscribe button for me. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your baseball franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebaseballgm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's Locked On in all caps in the game. So go ahead and do that. Now, let's start by discussing a little bit. We're going to do a bit of an overview of what happened in the series with the Cincinnati Reds. I know I put out a crossover with Jeff Carr and Steve Offenbaker of the Locked On Reds podcast. So we have that already. That's the video before this one on the YouTube and the podcast before this one, if you want to go ahead and check that out. That was an overview from both teams' perspectives and jumped in, but I want to talk a little bit more since the Reds series has ended. And now you're looking at the White Sox and the Rockies coming up to round out this week. How are we feeling about the Philadelphia Phillies in general? What are the major problems facing them? Was there anyone that broke out in the Reds series? Things of that nature. So the first thing I want to look at is the overall standing of the team. Where do they live in the landscape of Major League Baseball and the NL East right now? Because the Philadelphia Phillies, not a great start. Frankly, just not what we expected, and we all know that. They're 6-10. That's good for fourth in the NL East. Currently, they're 6 games back of the Atlanta Braves, who are 12-4. The Mets are 10-6. The Marlins are 500, 2 games above the Phillies, and then the Nationals are only 1 game below the Phillies. So you're still looking at a situation where the Philadelphia Phillies, they're not playing well, and they're not in the standings where you want them to be. And when you look at the National League, they're in the bottom, 4 or 5 teams in win percentage. That's unacceptable for a team of this talent. So we know it's been a rough start to the year. Now, the schedule is easy for the rest of the month, so you could be looking at a situation where you can make up some of that ground. And when I look at the run differential in the NL East, so the Atlanta Braves are a plus 24 run differential, meaning they score 24 more runs than their opponents. The Mets are plus 12. The Marlins are actually minus 26, who are 2 games better than the Phillies. The Nationals are minus 20. The Phillies are minus 16. So they have a better run differential than those two teams. And with the 13-0 loss in this series against the Cincinnati Reds, that's surprising. It's because the Phillies, when they're really good, can hang a lot of runs on a team as well. I mean, you saw that in the series ender when they went ahead and had a 9-run first inning on the Cincinnati Reds and Luis Cessa, who started the game for Cincinnati. I don't think the offense is the problem with this team. I think there's a couple pieces that need to be better, and JT Realmuto and Kyle Schwarber with runners in scoring position have not been good to start the year. But there are also guys that are pretty consistently good over the course of their career. We know JT Realmuto, when everything's all said and done, he's going to be the best catcher in baseball statistically. He just is. He does it every single year. And Kyle Schwarber, he's going to hit, and the power is going to come. And when the weather breaks, he's going to have that month of June that's a monstrous month, and everything's going to be okay there. But it's frustrating for the time being that you have opportunities for your big guys and they haven't come through. On the other hand, I do believe it's somewhat evened out by the incredible streak that Bryson Stott is on right now. Bryson Stott on a 16-game hit streak. He's been incredible. I'm going to talk about him more in a second, but the start to the year by him is great. The start to the year by Alec Bohm is great. He was on, I believe, a 10-game hit streak of his own. Brandon Marsh has been absolutely incredible to start this season. Another young player that you weren't expecting to get that much from. Edmundo Sosa has been really, really good in relief of, I guess, Alec Bohm, in relief of Derek Hall, who is in relief of Rhys Hoskins, and then Edmundo Sosa, who is in relief of Alec Bohm over there at third base. He's been really good as well. So between Marsh and Stott and Bohm and Sosa, you look at a situation where you're getting contributions from guys that you didn't think you're going to get, at least to the level that they are currently contributing. So I look at the offense and I say, short of hitting more home runs, which they'll do when the weather breaks. I know people complain about that every year. Well, why do they have to wait till the listen, it's just how baseball works in the Northeast. I know it's annoying. I know it's like you're watching the Rays hit 40 home runs a game down there in a dome down in Florida where the ball flies well, but it'll come for the Philadelphia Phillies. All right. I promise. I absolutely promise they're going to hit a bunch of home runs this year. They're going to be fine power numbers wise. Just hasn't happened yet. But yeah, the other guys have made up for the middle of the orders kind of issues. So I don't see it as a wash. The offense can absolutely be better and more consistent, but I see it as not the biggest problem on this team. The biggest problem to me is the starting pitching. They need to go deeper into games. They need to handle their business better. Aaron Nola, fine start, but he got a 9-run inning before he even stepped on the mound. That's not really a good sample for him bouncing back. That's like any major league pitcher should be able to go out and win a game that you start up 9. Every single one, reliever or starter, should be able to find a way to do that. And while he did do his job, it wasn't something that I'm looking at and saying, oh, that performance was Aaron Nola's back. So, no, I'm not there yet. He needs to continue to be better. Zach Wheeler needs to continue to be better and go deeper into the games, even though he had a nice start his last time out. We'll go ahead and see what he has in store against the Chicago White Sox, which is a series the Phillies are going into coming up starting tomorrow. Yes, the game against the Chicago White Sox tonight postponed due to weather already. So we got that notification earlier today. So I tweeted that out. But in case you hadn't seen that yet, yes, tonight's game is postponed. No Phillies game tonight. With Sixers playoffs going on, hey, it gives you a chance to focus on them. And we'll get back to the Philadelphia Phillies tomorrow. But Locked On Phillies, we're always zoned in on the Phillies. But I look at those two starting pitchers at the top of the rotation, and I say Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, it starts with them. They have to be better. And then Taijuan Walker, settling in would be nice. And anything you get from Matt Strahm and Bailey Falter is positive until Ranger Suarez and Andrew Painter come back. So I'm looking much more at the pitching than I am the lineup when I say what's gone wrong with the Philadelphia Phillies this year. And the bullpen has shown flashes, but they need to get consistent. And I think that's finding their roles. And I think we saw at the start of last year. And Rob Thompson needs to develop those roles quickly and make them very defined for these guys and go ahead and work everything out that way. So that's what I would fix. But when you have Bryson Stott doing what he's doing right now, it can fix a lot of problems with the team. The man is on a 16-game hitting streak, tied for the Philadelphia Phillies franchise record in modern baseball with, of course, Puddinhead Jones, who no one listening to this podcast ever watched play. I'm absolutely sure of it. But Puddinhead Jones, way back in the day, had a 16-game hit streak to start the year. Bryson Stott has now equaled that. And against Chicago tomorrow, he will have a chance to stand alone as the franchise leader in longest hit streak to start a year for the Philadelphia Phillies. He led off the game yesterday against Cincinnati in the series ender with a leadoff home run. He's been absolutely incredible. Listen, the guy's an otherworldly talent right now. I don't know if he'll stay this hot all year. I don't know if there's a regression coming and like a reverse back to the mean where he'll hit 100 for a month to end up hitting around 280 or something, 270, 280. It's possible, but the way he's swinging it right now and his approach at the plate, this kid might just hit like this for the whole season. And it won't be batting 400, but it'll be consistent big at bats for the Philadelphia Phillies. And that's much needed. So those are my big takeaways from the Cincinnati Reds series. Coming up, let's get into the series with the Chicago White Sox, preview the pitching matchups, talk a little bit about where each team stands, and some things I want to see from the Philadelphia Phillies in that series. We'll discuss that as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Phillies. And I want to tell you about Ultimate Baseball GM. Pro Baseball GM is the coolest game I've played in a long time. I've always thought I could be a great Major League GM. As it turns out, not as easy as it looks, right? Well, if you've had the same thought and fantasize about managing your own franchise, go and download Pro Baseball GM immediately. The game allows you to manage everything, every strategic aspect of a franchise. You play through the seasons. You lead your franchises and fans to glory as you try and build a historic dynasty. Emphasis on the word try. And in the simulation, you're responsible for so many things like hiring the right staff, firing coaches if they're not getting the job done, scouting and drafting players, managed through personalities. You get to learn the players' personalities and injuries that occur and dealing with that, trying to work through free agency, all of that, sponsorship deals, uniform deals, all of this stuff. It's all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and also playable offline, so you can play on the go as you want and when you want to. So it's great. Go ahead and check it out. Go ahead and build your team. See if you can be a good enough GM and see if you could be the Dave Dombrowski of Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. And the best part, we're going to give you a little boost. We're going to help you out. Locked On Phillies listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, we got a series coming with the Chicago White Sox. And where the White Sox currently stand is they're also 6-10. They're 4 games back in the AL Central, trailing the Minnesota Twins, who have started out on a hot start 10-6, and the Cleveland Guardians, who are at a 9-7 record. So Chicago's right there in the middle. Their run differential -23. They've had a very similar start when you look at the overarching view of where they're at record-wise and everything to the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, same record through 16 games. So should be an even matchup, right? You wish the Phillies were better than 6-10, but the White Sox haven't exactly been playing great baseball as of late, just looking at their recent schedule. They just took on the Orioles, and they lost 2 of 3 to the Orioles. They took on the Twins, and they lost 2 of 3 to the Twins. They had a little bit of trouble against the Pirates, losing 2 of 3 to the Pirates. I mean, they lost 2 of 3 to the Giants. I mean, this team is just losing 2 out of 3 machine. They're a losing series machine. It's all that it seems that they do, and that's a rough start to the year for the Chicago White Sox, who have, I mean, a little bit of I guess. They have an okay team. Luis Robert, Benintendi's with them, Yasmani Grandal, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson. I mean, you know the names. Elvis Andrus, who's been around forever, it feels like. There will be names that you'll recognize when you play the White Sox, but there's no guys that are out here that are really dominating anyone right now. The Phillies, I think, have like 3 or 4 guys hitting over 300 with significant amounts of focus. Yasmani Grandal is the number 1 average guy that's qualified as a batting average leader for this team. He's batting 298. So the offense hasn't been great for Chicago. Now, let's talk a little bit about the circumstances there, because we talked about the weather in the Northeast for the Philadelphia Phillies. Well, the weather on the south side of Chicago is not yet broken, and that's part of the reason the game was postponed today. It's not for rain. It was for cold. It was going to be so darn cold up there that there was a potential for snow, and MLB didn't want to chance it. They said push it back. So the Phillies will play a doubleheader later on in the week when they take on the Chicago White Sox later on in the series. So that's something to keep an eye on. As far as difficulty with the pitching, we'll have an episode later this week about that. And just looking at the series overview in total, want to run through the projected starters. But my point with bringing up the weather is that you look at the offense for Chicago, may not have broken through yet because it's so cold up there. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Not that the weather's nice right now, but just that, like the Phillies, I think the offense is a little undervalued for the White Sox right now. The pitching has been solid for them, though, at points, and they have some good names going. It was supposed to be Lance Lynn tonight, was supposed to be the starter. So we'll see if the starters get shifted back a game or not. Tonight was supposed to be Lance Lynn, but now we've got listed for game one, which is going to be tomorrow. ESPN showing the projected starters as Bailey Falter for the Phillies and Luke Giolito for the White Sox. Giolito, a really, really good pitcher. Advantage White Sox in that one. Game two of the series, we've got listed starter as Mike Clevinger for the Chicago White Sox and Taijuan Walker for the Philadelphia Phillies. So a couple new faces, new places. Walker coming to the Phillies from the Mets. Clevinger going to the White Sox via the Padres. We remember Mike Clevinger from last year. Hopefully the result in that game will be the same. So the Phillies have that as a mental advantage over Clevinger. So that's good. And then the final game of the series, you're going to be looking at a situation where we haven't had the pitchers announced yet because that game actually, sorry, it looks like as I reread everything in the release, there will be a later doubleheader at some point between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago White Sox. Doesn't seem like it's happening now unless it's happening Thursday. I don't know. There might be a doubleheader later this week. Let me go ahead and see if I can pull up exactly what's going on that with the initial tweet and the person who reported it. I believe it was Jesse Rogers had it as far as the Phillies game being postponed in Chicago. Okay, yeah, sorry, straight doubleheader tomorrow. So we've got a doubleheader going, and that's game one and game two. Yeah, so we'll see who gets the starts, but you're going to see probably Lance Lynn. You're going to see Giolito, and you might, and you're probably going to see Clevinger. I'd be surprised if it wasn't those three guys that you see starting, but because of the change in game plan, that may be a sixth starter that's called up for each team. So we could see our first Christopher Sanchez start of the year for the Philadelphia Phillies. Who knows what happens? A lot of weird stuff because of this doubleheader. I like doubleheaders for this team right now for the Phillies because it gives them a chance to get hot. And if they have a day, see, they seem like they have days where they show up and they're going to lose 20-0, or they show up and they're going to win 20-0. And if they get one of those days where they're just seeing the ball super well, having two games and being able to make up two spots in the course of 6 hours is great in the win-loss column. So I'll take that, and you'll have to take the risk that they have one of those bad days and end up getting smoked in two games and lose the series on one day. But no, I kind of do like the doubleheader for these guys. So that's fine for the Phillies. We'll see how they handle it, but I'm not too worried because the White Sox are not too quality of a team, and this is a team you should be able to take 2 or 3 from. I mean, everybody else they played this year basically has. So there's a little bit of the preview of a weird start to the series with the Chicago White Sox with the weather delay, and we'll go ahead and see how that plays out. But again, I'm expecting 2 wins out of 3 games for the Philadelphia Phillies against the White Sox, and we will see how it plays out. Coming up next, though, I want to wrap up with a little fun topic about 2 young Philadelphia Phillies and who's going to end up having the better overall career for the Philadelphia Phillies. And I have an answer that I think is atypical of what the average Philadelphia fan would pick. I think I'm going to be on the not losing side of the argument, but the side with the less support of this argument. So I'll make my case as to why. We'll continue that all as we continue this episode of Locked On Phillies. But first, I want to tell you about one of our newest sponsors here at Locked On. So Rare. So Rare is absolutely awesome. It's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game, and you got a chance to go ahead and go in and find these cards. They're basically baseball cards, and you bring in the players. So you draft the teams. You have points to a lot, right? Here's the way it works. So you have officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 Major League Baseball teams. And you go ahead and they give you a certain number of points, and you draft your team based on the allotted points, and then you play in challenges. Like it's basically weekly fantasy, but there's 2 games a week that you can be a part of. So it's not waiting 7 days each. It's like 3 to 4 day matchups. And then if you win, you get new prizes like rare cards or upgrades and stuff like that. And as your team gets better, you can play in tougher and tougher challenges with cooler and cooler prizes. So listen to some of these awesome prizes that are available if you can go ahead and advance far enough and win enough competitions. You can get so rare scarcity cards, which are super rare cards. You can get game tickets to Major League Baseball games, merchandise, signed jerseys, VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. All this stuff is very cool and available to you to win through So Rare. Prizes may vary depending on the competition, so you got to play in those higher level competitions to get them. But guess what? Head to sorare.com/locked on. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards. Set your lineup and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com /locked on to start playing today so you get everything all squared away. And you will get set up to build the best team possible there on So Rare. So go ahead and check it out. You didn't get on fantasy baseball this year, you can go ahead and do it through So Rare and win some cooler prizes than you'd win in just your regular buddies fantasy baseball league. All right, we're getting ready to wrap up Locked On Phillies. First, I want to put this debate out into the universe, and we may dive deeper into this at a later point. We get a break in between games, an off day or so much. Now we have an off day today, but between two series and a lot of stuff to talk about the state of this team. But I was asked a question this morning over at 97.5 The Fanatic on the John Kincaid Show in the morning. Which of these players is going to have the better career for the Philadelphia Phillies when it's all said and done? Bryson Stott and Alec Bohm. And it's a tough question. Stott has had an incredible start to the year. So has Bohm. And Bohm comes with a more proven track record at the major league level. He's got more seasons under his belt. And I answered Bryson Stott. And here's the reason why. When I look at the way the guys play the game, I'm going to match them up in a couple categories. Ability to hit for average, ability to hit for power, athleticism, and the ability to field the baseball. Those are the most important things to me. And I'm going to go ahead and break those down and make the case why I think Bryson Stott will ultimately have a better career with the Philadelphia Phillies than Alec Bohm. Because a lot of people that were watching on our YouTube chat over there at 97.5 The Fanatic on that channel, they were saying, no, it's got to be Bohm. Connor, you're off on this. It's not Stott. Bohm's going to be better. And I get why you would say that. I'm not here to tell you that's completely wrong. I'm telling you I disagree, and we'll see how it plays out. But Bryson Stott is going to hit for better average over his career than Alec Bohm, I believe, because of the approach at the plate. Alec Bohm has a great swing. He sees the ball well. But there are times where his approach is still leaves some stuff to be desired, where he'll get lost in the count and all of a sudden be behind the eight ball, and then he can be made to look like he's a little bit less prepared for bat. And this is relative to a guy on a 16-game hit streak. I'm not saying relative to your average major league player. I like Alec Bohm's approach at the plate. I just like Bryson Stott's more, and I think that's going to lead him to seeing more pitches and having a better average over his career. The power is undoubtedly Bohm's way. He's a much bigger player, much stronger player. You've seen the power kind of develop, and his swing path creates a lot more of that lift. Now, maybe at some point in the future, we'll see Bryson Stott make that development in his game. But I don't think Stott will ever be a 25 home run guy at the major league level. Like, I just don't think he has it in him. I don't know how close he'll get to 20 this year, even if he keeps hitting. So he's shown a little bit of pop, but Bohm clearly has more. So that's advantage Bohm. So we got to check in one category, check in the other. Let's go to overall athleticism. I got to give it to Bryson Stott. Now, Bohm is kind of one of those guys that he's big and he's lanky because he's like 6'5", 6'6". So those guys, it's harder for them to be as athletic as guys that are more compactly built like Bryson Stott. I'm not calling him short. I'm calling him compactly built. And he's not short. He's like 6 foot. So he's a guy that when you stand next to him, you're like, okay, oh, wow, you're bigger in person than you look on television. He's a nice sized Major League Baseball player. But that lends to him being more athletic. I think the speed is more apparent with Stott when you watch him swipe bases. He's gotten pretty good at stealing bases early on in the season. So, yes, athleticism I'm giving to Stott. And also defense. And here's my biggest deciding factor. I don't see Alec Bohm ever, regardless of what position he plays or how hard he works at it, being a plus defender at the major league level. Right now, I think he's made it to average MLB third baseman, which is respectable considering how his career started. You'll take that because the guy's going to hit. But I think Bryson Stott, with his athleticism and his movements in the field and now playing second base, I think he could be an above average defender at second base for his whole career. And Trey Turner helps that. And honestly, Alec Bohm helps that at third. And Finding someone to play first base will help that as well. But that's another thing I give the nod to Stott in. So that's why I think Stott will end up having a better career with the Philadelphia Phillies than Alec Bohm. But I think they're both great. And I think we're seeing the extension of the Philadelphia Phillies window. It's not just Bryce Harper. It's not just Trey Turner. It's these young guys that are going to be cornerstones of this franchise for years to come before they even hit free agency. And you can throw Edmundo Sosa and Brandon Marsh in there that help out as well. It's going to be a really, really fun year watching those young guys continue to develop. So embrace debate. Let me know what you think in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter. Who's going to have the better career, Alec Bohm or Bryson Stott? We'll see. I go Stott. I'd love to hear what you think. That's all for today's Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you use your podcast, wherever you get your podcast, view your podcast, listen to your podcast is what I should say. Available on YouTube, all that good stuff. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the preview of a doubleheader between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Chicago White Sox. And we're also going to list out some of the big problems that the Phillies have been facing early on in this season to kind of see, hey, what in the world is going on, and is there an easy way to fix them? So all of that's coming up on tomorrow's episode. Go ahead and make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube so you don't miss it. And I will talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.